I understand, Kristen, you've got a statement from the administration?
That's right, Gadi. We said that President Biden was watching this closely, and now we have his reaction. Let me read you part of it. He says, tonight, the House took a critical step forward to prevent a first-ever default and protect our country's hard-earned and historic economic recovery. This budget agreement is a bipartisan compromise. Neither side got everything it wanted. That's the responsibility of governing. I want to thank Speaker McCarthy and his team for negotiating in good faith, as well as Leader Jeffries for his leadership. He goes on to praise parts of this bill. Why is this first graph so significant, Gadi? There you have him thanking Speaker McCarthy. Remember, the two entered these negotiations and were coming out of meetings taking jabs at each other. So this is a very different tone. And we saw that once we started to see these negotiations move toward a deal. And this really puts a fine point on it. I want to just make another kind of big picture point about all of this, Gadi, in terms of the timing. I covered the debt ceiling fight back in 2011 when they signed a bill. The president, then former President Obama, signed a bill into law really in the hours before the deadline. Well, the nation's credit rating was downgraded despite the fact that they had reached a deal, simply because they had walked so close to that timeline. And so that is looming very large over this entire process. Remember, President Biden was the vice president at the time, and part of the way in which he entered into these negotiations was informed by what happened back in 2011. And so everyone knows that the clock is ticking, not just for that June 5th deadline, but really to try to get something done as quickly as possible to avoid having the nation's credit rating downgraded. You have one of the top credit rating agencies already warning that it could potentially do that, citing the political dysfunction of this process, and that is, again, an echo from 2011. And so that really looms large over this entire process, Gadi. Again, as this moves to the Senate, we anticipate the White House, the negotiators will really have a robust all-hands-on-deck outreach to senators to try to get this across the finish line, Gadi.
Really striking to see that statement coming from the White House, with the reminder that neither side got everything they wanted. When it comes to the president's perspective, what do you think was the biggest loss, the biggest thing on the chopping block to get us to where we are right now?
Well, look, I think the issue that Democrats have been most angered by is this issue of work requirements. We know that negotiators went into these meetings and their goal was to kill having expanded work requirements for things like food assistance, for the SNAP program. And that is now a part of this final deal. And you have a number of Democrats coming out and saying, look, the president should have started these negotiations earlier. He gave up too much. But ultimately, Gadi, the counterpoint to that, and the counterpoint that the White House makes, is this is what compromise looks like. And Medicaid is not touched, and a whole range of other social programs are not touched in this final deal. So I think that's where the debate will continue. When you talk about what some of the Democratic senators are going to be demanding moving forward, I think that that will be a part of the conversation. What, if any, guarantees can the White House give that they will take another look at this issue if and when that is possible? Because the work requirement issue was arguably one of these biggest sticking points, Gadi, and it's one of the areas that is allowing Speaker McCarthy to say to his caucus, look, we got a lot of what we asked for in this final piece of legislation.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.